Every year at this time, on the Feast of the Epiphany, we have the same readings. And all three readings have the same two themes. One, a particular event in history, and two, that it is meant for everyone. Happened to someone, but it's meant for the entire world. The feast itself has a very interesting history. It was originally very much a part of the Greek Orthodox Church, but not as the Magi. Next Sunday we have the baptism of the Lord. They would celebrate that. It's more evidently a coming out party, if you will, the baptism of the Lord, or the wedding feast of Cana, Gospel of John, where Jesus performs the first of many signs. But in the Western Church, and I'm not sure exactly why, the focus has been on the Magi. We celebrate in North America, it seems to me, we celebrate Christmas in a much bigger way than we do the Epiphany. In other parts of the world, it's different. For example, in particular, in some countries in South America, Santa Claus and the three kings are about the same person. And it's the three kings who bring the gifts to the children, not old St. Nick. And it's a big, big celebration. Here it unfortunately tends to be kind of a closing session of the Christmas season, rather than an opening session of joy, not a private birthday party, but joy for the world. So these are things that I think we need to keep in our mind as we go into this particular text. The second thing is, there is a way in which you can talk about it being a real turning point, Christmas and Epiphany. We are in the month of January. I mean, you can feel it, can't you? Month of January, and there is a Roman god called Janus. Unfortunately, he's often described as two-faced, but when we use the expression two-faced, it means somebody who lies. But Janus was a god who could look both ways, a face going in this direction and one going in that direction. And in both those instances, he was able to guard the city gates in the west and on the east. Today we have the word the janitor. The janitor is someone who protects the house. Some of you may not know that you're that, but that would be a description. Janus. There's another way to think about it. It's that period of time that now ends, where the light has diminished, and it's the opening of the time where the light returns at a greater pace with greater power. So it suggests that we are at a turning point from several points of view. The feast itself is focused on the gospel for the entire world. Let me take a quick look at the gospel and then the other two readings, and then I want to discuss the main points. When you look at the Gospel of Matthew, there's a mention of King Herod. We know historically that he was a bit of a psychopath. He was a person who was always, afraid. He trusted no one. The old saying, some people say I'm paranoid, but I don't trust them. He was that on steroids. And when he heard there were these people coming from the east, you might say, why not from the west? Somebody asked me that. I said, I don't know. As long as they come from whatever direction, welcome wise men. So here he hears about them. These kings say, where is the newborn king of the Jews? I'm the king of the Jews. What do you mean there's a new one? I don't like this. I feel threatened. And he asks two questions. Where and when? Where, obviously, so I could, destroy him. And when, so I could figure out about how long this kid has been around. And if you remember the story of the Holy Innocents, up until 2 years of age was the decision that was made. So here the wise men tell him several things, but he calls his own people together. This I always feel is a kind of subtle incrimination. I have to be careful about this. But he calls the scribes and the leaders, the Jewish leaders, the professional religious people. Where is the king of the Jews supposed to be born? And they give him the text. And they don't care. They know, but they don't care. They won't say, do you know something? Herod, what have you heard? There could be the newborn king of the Jews. That's what we've waited for. We've longed for this. We are Jews and we're longing for the Messiah. We'll go look. No. Ho-hum, here's the footnote. Next. Dreadful. So he finds out the time. They go. They visit this. Notice it says not a cave. It's a house. So maybe several months after Jesus was born, we don't know. And they followed the star, and they found Mary there. No mention of Joseph. Notice they never say 3 kings. We've kind of read that into the text. Might be 7. Perfect number. We don't know. And then finally they offer him the gifts not only of gold and frankincense, but myrrh, which signifies early on his death. So you have the event, these 3 people that represent the universal area, and then you have the particular Herod and his machinations. If you look at the first reading, it's simpler, it's more direct. You have a statement, your light has come, and it's going to be for all the nations. The people are going to be restored after exile. And all nations shall walk by your light. All shall gather and come to you. Not just individuals, but caravans, camels, filled with all kinds of goodies. They're going to come. So it's going to be everybody. The second reading, Jesus, brothers and sisters, Paul, one day I'd love to spend some time on Paul himself, but Paul is overwhelmed on the road to Damascus by this experience of Jesus. All right? Powerful experience of Jesus. But he goes on to say this is for the whole world. Not made known to people in other generations, has now been revealed to this holy apostle, to me, and now the Gentiles. That's us. If it weren't for Paul, it's a good question whether we'd be Christians. Think about that. Converted Jew is the reason you're a Catholic. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, that's how it unfolds. So, here are the 3 points. What would be the question? If Epiphany, Epiphanos, is a manifestation, a showing forth of the light of Christ, how good are we at that? How often, if someone sees us or watches us in action, says, boy, Christ must be the light of the world? One author put the challenge this way. He's been teaching for a number of years in Rome. I don't know if this has had an effect on him. He says, the more common form of unbelief than militant atheists is a cultural one. He calls it practical atheism, meaning that the very culture undermines the gospel. The culture is a kind of Herod, as in the story of the wise men. After all, he pretended to be interested in religion, whereas in fact he wanted to kill someone. There's that appearance of friendliness toward religion in our northern English-speaking world, but in reality, the culture is deeply relativistic. 20-some years ago, this was the statement. Maybe he'd change the statement today and say there's a little more explicit hostility towards religion in our culture. Then he goes on, I would say the biggest danger to religion in the English-speaking wealthy countries is that the gospel becomes both passive and private. Passive in that you don't expect to make any difference in the world, and private in that faith is something you keep in your heart and your soul, and your relationship to God is something that's very private. It's hidden. So what happens? You lose out on a sense of community, and you lose out on a sense of commitment. Let me make 3 brief points. One about practices, one about community, and one about commitment. First of all, practices. I think it's extremely important for people today to find ways to be more public in their practices, to find ways that people can see that we're believers. And there are a lot of very simple ways to do this. One of the problems I see regularly is, and you know this, if you go out to dinner, the number of people who, after doing their order, when the plate is set down, it's a very simple thing, would simply make the sign of the cross and pray together as a family. Let me make just one. And that comes with the notion of joy. I'm a Midwestern German. The German Book of Humor is no longer than 3 pages. One of my favorite atheists, as I've quoted him before, says about us Christians, you don't look very redeemed. Pope Francis says, if you want to witness to the gospel, please don't look like you're just returning from a funeral. Joy, however, doesn't mean just happy. People that are always happy and bouncy drive me nuts. I go the other direction when they come. I think the best way to think of joy for the world is being faithful. It's fidelity. It's staying the course. Some of us have a very tough road to hoe. Some of us suffer from a depression we've never invited. Some of us suffer from relationships that are broken and we don't know how to heal them. What's really crucial is that we remain faithful. Jesus was faithful to the point of shedding blood. In that fidelity, paradoxically, is a joy that the world cannot give. And that's what we're to share with the world.